Hey, thanks for joining me again today, guys. Steve here from the Pinball Room. Today, we're going to go through and we're going to get all of our wonderful inserts finally glued into our whitewood. Whitewood number 7. Call it 7G for good grief, because dang, it's the 7th whitewood officially, but you saw from the last video, I won't go into detail, but yeah, this is like we had a lot of iterations to get to this, a lot of wasted wood, issues with the CNC machine. Anyway, whole different story. You already heard me talk about that in the other video, but we've got a whole bunch of inserts that we're going to go through today. We're going to get them glued into the playfield. I'm going to go through and walk through all the materials you need. The process that was working for me, I did some test glues last night. I forgot to record, but we'll walk you through what I did. Got a couple of different ideas from that. And yeah, let's just jump right into it. Getting inserts into your playfield for like a final whitewood. We're going to put inserts in. We'll glue them or let them cure overnight. Then we're going to go back through and we're going to sand it nice and flush. And then we're also going to go through and we're going to do some clear coating. For me, with being my first project, it kind of serves two purposes. One, the whitewood, we'll have the machine for a while, play testing, working on light shows and all these things without the artwork, right? It won't be the final playfield. So it allows us to kind of pull some X in and out and not have to worry about, dinging anything up on a final playfield. But it also is going to go through and allow us to clear coat that and be like practice. So we've got practice for gluing inserts in. I mean, I did a little prior pre-practice right here. This is almost kind of like another round of practice for me because I've never done this in a full playfield before. And then we'll do some clear coating. That'll be kind of a practice. I've never worked with clear coat. Anyway, we've got lots of great tips from people who have gone before, who are more experts and more experienced on this. So I'm following their lead and going to share with you what they've shared with me. And I'm pretty confident in the results we're going to get. It does not seem like rocket science to go through and do this. For me, I don't know if you're like you, but like clear coating was always like this idea of just like, I don't know, it's like dangerous fumes. You'd use real automotive clear coat, and if you mess it up, and how many layers do you do, and does it make the artwork bleed? I've been told to not worry about it too much. It should work out just fine. Anyway, clear coating will be another video, but today we just got to go through and get all the inserts in. So let's walk through the materials of what we got and what we're using, okay? First and foremost, obviously, you need your inserts. I've got a giant bag here. If you recall from a prior video, I basically mentioned we want basically a double set, and that's because we're going to put a set of inserts in every single hole inside this playfield, and then it's basically throwaway. Again, it's our final whitewood, all the final practice, and it should be able to play just like the real game or darn near close, right? Then maybe a couple extra layers of clear in the final one. But once we're done, it's all glued in and clear coated, like those aren't coming out. And we're not going to try to pop them out. We're not trying to salvage them or save them. That would be way too much work for what it's worth from what I've been told and what I imagine. I don't want to try to do that. So we've got an extra set of inserts that'll then be for the final playfield. Final playfield. Anyway, so I have lots of inserts. Make sure you got that. Then the other main thing you need, obviously, your playfield you'll be putting them into. And then you're going to need some sort of glue. And I was Googling around, looking at different videos, and all of the videos I really found on like inserts, installing, and replacing everything else, great videos, great people throwing great content out there. I appreciate it. Every single one of them was using wood glue. And several of them even admitted, said, yeah, wood glue might not be like the perfect solution, but it adheres really well to the wood. It's a little more forgiving, easy to clean up. And definitely, as far as like for all the restoration videos I saw, I have no reason to question that. It looks great. However, even several of them mentioned that while it holds well to the wood, it does not really, bond awesome with plastic. My concern is that this is my first time, and I'm still figuring out exactly the tolerances of how big the hole should be for the insert and all that. And wood expands and contracts in different temperatures. I'm in Utah. We get pretty hot summers, pretty cold winters. Machines go in my garage, go in the basement, kind of. I don't necessarily have like the most like temperature controlled environment, and so I feel like my playfield is going to expand and contract. So I want a glue that's going to hold really well to the plastic. And what was recommended to me is this, I'll get up close, a West System G-Flex epoxy adhesive for tough, permanent, waterproof repairs on plastics. Now it says plastics. From what I read up on the reviews though, seems like it works well on wood. Comes highly recommended from Jamie Boyd and some others in the Fast Pinball Slack channel we're part of. If you buy their products, you get access to their Slack channel. I highly recommend it if nothing else, just that Slack channel, the community is not huge, but man, everybody is so dang helpful. Anyway, he has used this a ton. Several others have also. And it mixes up to a nice clear. It doesn't yellow. It's UV resistant, and so it will not fade or turn yellow if you have your machine by a window. It's a strong bond. So anyway, we've got that. It's a 2-part epoxy. So there's like an adhesive and a hardener, or the resin and a hardener. We're going to squirt them in to some sort of like a plastic container. I got these little plastic cups that I stole from my wife's little crafting area. She got these. You also have like bigger plastic bowls. You can even use like paper bowls. Like paper plates and paper bowls, but if you do use a paper bowl, I would recommend like doubling it up just to make sure, because it's more absorbent, right? And things are going to kind of soak through. You don't want that leaking on your wife's nice table or anything, right? Hence the cardboard we have underneath. And then we need some sort of stirring stick. So I actually started yesterday again, before I raided my wife's craft area, and we just had like some old like wooden chopsticks in a drawer from some restaurant, I don't know, Panda Express or somewhere, and I pulled one of these out and was stirring and mixing with it and applying, and it worked pretty well. But the things I read, it's more like you want maybe like a tongue depressor. My wife has these like kind of artsy craftsy depressor things that are like, I guess they got notches, and so you can like, I don't know, build crafts with them. But this is going to be the right size also and work well. If you have like something similar in plastic, I think plastic would work fine also. The wood, it's you know, something disposable. After a while, it's probably going to get kind of gummed up, and we'll maybe switch to another one. Like a paint stick is going to be too wide, I think. It will stir really well, but then we also need something we're going to be applying the glue into these small plastic holes, right? And some of these, like that little hole I have there for like the pill insert shape and these smaller circles, like you need something pretty small to get in there. Even this might be hard on certain angles. So anyway, just keep that in mind. Something that you can get into kind of those cracks and crevices. We need to get down to every last tiny little corner with like a fine point, like toothpick. I don't think we're going to have that issue, but toothpicks might be handy to have on hand also to get things really spread around how you want. But in essence, you need your glue, you need some sort of a mixing container that can handle the epoxy, and then you need like a stirring stick and then something to apply it if it's not the same thing. And then, what else? Gloves, because this is not stuff you want to get on your skin. From everything I've heard, this stuff is not really anything crazy you have to worry about other than just like skin and eye irritation. It doesn't say anything about special ventilation or anything, but if it does get on your skin, you gotta like, let's see, wash skin or remove it from before it cures with a waterless skin cleanser and then followed by soap and water. I got just a tiny bit on one of my fingers last night, wiped off with a paper towel, soap and water, and it's all good. Anyway, but it's epoxy, so make sure you're careful. That I think covers it for all the materials we actually need to get going. All right, let me go through though and show you what I did last night. Like I said, I forgot to record, but I went through and I played around with this a little bit last night. So I went through and I put in, well, these 7 I went through and did, because these I had good cuts for. And I cannot push these out no matter how hard I try. These things are in tight. They're in good. They are not moving. And like there's a little bit of discoloration on the wood around where the glue was, right? I kind of wiped off a little bit excess. I went the route of, I did not even bother trying to put glue along like every single inch of the inside edge. I just kind of scraped it down, made sure I had a decent amount, a relatively decent amount, but not too much. And when I pushed the inserts in, I only got a couple little points where it kind of came up, and I just kind of wiped that off. A couple of these I had maybe a little bit more than I should have, and I let them sit overnight, and now they are in rock hard and ready to go through and sand. So that's basically the same thing that we want to do with the whole entire playfield. So yeah, so let me swap out the wood and we'll get going. I'll show you my process. So what I'm doing is, I mean, you can see what I'm doing, right? I'm going through and I'm laying these out. The reason why is because these I just purchased separately from the other ones I bought like a year ago, and so there's a good chance they're from a different lot or a different set of insert production, right? They can come out like in different lots, and there can be variances per lot in how the things came out of the mold, and so they might be a little bit skinnier, they might be a little bit thicker. And this is honestly something I probably should have done earlier and triple checked all my cuts up against this lot, but I'm going to go through and just kind of put them all in and just double, triple check and make sure we don't have anything that doesn't fit because these are maybe suddenly tighter or anything. I'm also just kind of putting like generally near the area where I'm going to be working on them. So as I go through and do the glue, it's just right there ready for me just to slide in place. That's my thinking anyway. See, and I like them just to be able to just kind of fall into place. I don't really have to do any pushing or anything. They just kind of slide into place. That's I guess the tolerance as far as for how tight and accurate these holes are that I went for. Easy for me to work with, but they're not really like wiggling around inside, so everything should still line up very well with how I want. Now, these guys are a little bit looser than what I wanted, but I think it'll be all right. tell you, it's fun to go through and start putting the inserts in. For me, it's very fun because it just starts to take you to that next level of like, oh, I can now start to imagine this with the lights flashing, the colors going, and it's like, oh, this is going to be so gorgeous, so fun. All right, so far everything seems to be fitting great. Not too loose, not too tight. Everything is right how I want it. Ooh, this guy. Oh, that's right. We had a little bit of an issue with the cut on this guy. He does have some wiggle. We'll have to worry about fix him. Okay, everything went in nice and smooth. All right, now I gotta pop it all back out. All right. Hopefully it's a better angle for you. Let's keep going. One thing I failed to mention, I mentioned it briefly, but like make sure you have your paper towels close on hand also. All right, so with this, all you do is twist off the cap, pull it off, and then you're gonna squirt some in. We're going to go through, I'm just going to do the whole rest of this one. Gives us a decent amount. And let's start stirring. Okay, we'll start down here, let's shoot again. So again, I don't want this thing like completely overloaded. I'm going to put about that much on, if you can see that. And I'm going to kind of just go in from the edge and kind of scrape it up. So hopefully I want to minimize how much I'm getting up outside the rim right now, so there's as little cleanup as possible. And again, you don't need a whole ton. This one I'm going to put a little bit extra in because the hole was a little bit too big, and I knew that from the way the CNC was going. And you can even kind of scrape the glue in with the bottom if you want. Okay, I'm going to push him kind of on the upper side where I want him. I'll have a little gap here on the bottom. That's just going to we'll have to play with getting that cleared in with, filled in with clear. Okay, and you push it in and then let it sit. Okay, let's start with these circles now. So I'm kind of like putting it like 4 or 5 spots around the outside and then kind of like smearing it in between. I found if I just like started putting like a whole bunch in one spot and then try to move it around, it did not spread as quick and easily as I wanted. It's still kind of a gel consistency, but here we go. We don't need much more than that. Bingo. This stuff holds really good. You'll notice here on this playfield, this cheap plywood, I had a big section of the veneer here kind of come up during the CNC process, so that's going to be nice. We'll have to see how that works when we're doing some clear coat. Maybe it'll give us a chance to kind of practice filling in like a void with extra clear, right? Talking with my buddies who have done this more, well, I mean more because I haven't done it all before, but who have done this a bunch before. So you'll go through and you'll be doing your clear coat, and sometimes you can get low spots. Kind of like a little bit of like a divot, just if you have kind of a shallow spot in your wood. And they say you can go through and take a bunch of extra clear, spray it into like the lid of the can, the spray can, and get like an eyedropper, and just kind of like drop in a few drops here and there, and then you can sand that flat, and that'll help kind of fill in those concave areas. So I'm thinking I'm going to try to do a similar thing right in here and kind of build it up with some extra clear and see if that works well enough. Now, before I go too much further, I want to just be making sure I'm just kind of wiping off extra with my paper towel, because I don't need to sand any more than I have to sand, right? Like, don't want to have a bunch building up. Going 45 minutes to work with all this. Looking at my clock, all right. Maybe I should have set myself a timer, might have been good, because I'm just going to kind of get lost in this work now and might lose track. I'll have to remember to check every once in a while. Whenever I see like a big glob kind of go down, I'm kind of going back down to scrape it and pick it up. The one thing that sometimes is a temptation, at least for me, kind of get going in a routine. I'm really careful about exactly how much I'm putting on to apply at one time so it doesn't get messy. And then I find myself kind of getting in this mode like, all right, let's kind of pick up the pace. The next thing I know, I'm putting on like double the amount of adhesive on my stick, and then I'm getting like just so much more I need to kind of clean up, and it gets out of control. Like, oh, that one's got like a ton. It's all goopy and going everywhere. Like, be consistent. Test, like I did on my thing. I kind of tested last night how much epoxy I felt like I needed. Test a little bit, and then stick with that. Don't keep changing up on yourself. Stick with what was working for your test. Don't let yourself, unintentionally kind of start to change your process, because then you'll start getting different results. So just be patient with yourself. Takes a little time, but hey, I mean, what else do you want to do with your Saturday afternoon? Working on my pinball machine is what I want to do. I like to go through and work on my pinball machine in the morning. I'm an early morning person. Well, I'm a morning person. I can't say I'm like an early morning person, but I'm definitely a morning person versus a night owl. My wife and pretty much everybody else in my family are night owls, which works out because that way I get to wake up a little bit, an hour or two earlier than everybody else on a Saturday, and get out there and start doing some stuff in my projects, and then hopefully wrap up, my midday to where then I can still spend time with family and not make my wife feel like I've completely abandoned her for my pinball machines. Now this epoxy, it says you've got 45 minutes to kind of work with it. You got kind of this gel period of about 3 to 4 hours. It's kind of gelling, and then at that point, after 3 to 4 hours, you're kind of free to kind of start touching and working with things, but it doesn't fully cure for another 7 to 10 depending on temperature. For this, you want the temperature to be at least 65 degrees, or else it significantly slows the curing time, it said, which is why I'm doing it here and not inside my garage. Because my garage, it's still like 45 degrees outside. We've had a long, cold winter so far. All right. So we're about halfway through the play field, and we've used about 2/3 of what was in there. And I used a little bit last night, but roughly 1 tub is enough. All right, so there you go. That's it. We got them all in. Everything's all set. And yeah, we're gonna go through and we're gonna dry, we're gonna let it cure overnight, and then we'll cut back in, and tomorrow we'll go through and we'll start sanding. All right, so everything on our play field is all nice and dried and cured, ready to go. We can still see kind of some of the glue stain on the wood a little bit here, right? But anyway, we're gonna go through and sand it down now, get all nice and flush. We'll make sure we use the right epoxy the next time that's perfectly clear, doesn't have just a hint of yellow. So there's lots of different ways you can go through and sand this. Some people use orbital sanders. Some people very highly say don't use an orbital sander. Block sanding is one of the common things I've heard about. If you have access to a nice large planer, you can maybe take it through a planer. I don't know about that. The only experience I've had with the planers down my local makerspace, and I don't really love the way it works because my wife and I went down there, we made some breadboards, some cutting boards, and we sent them through, and it planed it really good, but like the front 3 inches and the tail 3 inches both got cut down extra, so I have to do like extra sanding to get it really flat. Anyway, block sanding is the way I'm going. There's lots of different ways you can block sand. You can take a block, literally with sandpaper around it. You take a larger block, like a 2x4 with sandpaper around it. Or you can be, all snooty like me and go through and splurge for a nice 16-inch plane sander. I believe that's what it's called. And this uses special sandpaper that comes in these rolls. That's the right width here, and it's just in these long. This is like 2 3/4, which is what the width is of this, like by 20 yards. And I've got lots of different grits of sandpaper here. I've got, what do I got here? I've got 200, and I've got 1,000, 800, 400, all the way down to 220. And we're going to go through and be able to do multiple passes with this, right? So anyway, this has these handy dandy little guys that grab the sandpaper, okay? So we're going to put a strip in there, wrap it around, and then we'll be able to go through and sand it out. And we'll see how nice and smooth. The reason I've heard people say don't use an orbital sander, they're super fast and they save you lots of time. But it's also very easy for you to kind of change the amount of pressure you're putting down and to sand down some uneven spots and kind of get some dips and have things not really be perfectly flat, which is what we really want. We want it perfectly smooth and flat. So the larger, longer piece of wood you can wrap your sandpaper around to be sanding, the easier it is to make sure that you're being even all the way through. You still need to watch the pressure you're putting down, obviously, right? I'm hoping this will work as great as it says. So I'm going to start with the rough with the 220. I probably could have started with like a 180 and gone a little bit lower. I started at 220. Hopefully this will not be more work than it needs to be, starting a little bit higher at 220. So these are nice. It comes cheap and it's self-adhesive, so you can go through and easily stick it on to whatever block you're doing. You don't even need one that has these little clamps at the end like I do. Just get a nice straight piece of wood and you can get it to go down on nice and easy. Lock down all my wheels on my cart. Okay, first quick lessons learned so far. Still need to be careful when I'm going across things like the ball trough cutout. It was going through and that piece kind of snagged and tore a little bit of the sandpaper right there. Other thing, my cart, my workbench is on wheels. I didn't have it locked down. Even with it locked down, it's still moving just a little bit. So make sure you have a very secured thing. I clamped down my PLAYFIELD on top of this workbench so it doesn't move. That's probably obvious, but definitely want some good resistance, right? The other thing you're going to notice, let me bring the camera in here real close. The other thing you're going to notice here is that the inserts, look how cloudy these are now. Look at how cloudy these inserts are, just a little bit of sanding compared to the ones right up here next to them. See, these are all clear. These immediately got cloudy, okay? Even if I get them wet, still cloudy, okay? Now, everybody's sworn and promised me not to worry about that. You go through and sand them, Steve, they'll get buffed, whatever you know. We're gonna go through, we're gonna clean them up afterwards, and once you wipe them down with like a wet microfiber, and then come back through and actually put the clear on, the clear will go through and actually kind of dissolve and eat just a tiny bit, and the last little bits of like dust and this cloudiness, and it'll eat that all right up, and we'll be back to nice, smooth, shiny insert again. At least that's what they promised me. Now I've got some gaps here that I knew were bad from this cut. I got some big gaps. I'm going to sand like crazy. I'm going to take some compressed air, spray all that out, and then I'm going to get some more epoxy and kind of fill in those gaps. I'll fill those in with epoxy. I've got a couple of those, this low spot where the veneer got torn up. So I'm going to practice going through and covering that up with a nice small layer of epoxy to fill in the cracks, etc. Okay, until there's no gaps anywhere. And anyway, then we'll call it good and ready to do a clear coat. All right. Bunch of sawdust later, and probably about, oh, don't slam this too hard, Steve. Been slamming a little too hard. Have to fix that. But we're there. It survived at least one playfield. My abusive sanding procedures. Have to see what I can do to get those back down in place. But it worked. Whew. Got to go through and blow all the sawdust out with compressed air now, but we're good. It is smooth, so smooth, so smooth. You can't even hit it with your fingernail. It just, so it worked. In hindsight, I think I would have started with a little bit lower grit first. I had a few of my inserts that were up a little bit more proud than others. For most of them, they were fairly flush, and so it wasn't too much effort, and the 220 did fine, but I think like a 140 or 180 would probably be a little bit better for a first pass, just to really knock everything down flat and then go through with like a 220. That's really as smooth as we need to get for sandpaper, from my understanding, to be able to go through and be prepared for a clear coat. Be prepared for a clear coat. So I'm going to go through, blow it all down, take a damp microfiber towel, wipe it all down, do everything I can to make sure I'm getting all the loose sawdust out. I don't want this sawdust sitting in there anywhere. And then where I've got this low spot and a couple of cracks, I'll go through with my clear epoxy. That's coming in the mail. And get that filled in. Okay. I mean, it doesn't matter so much for this one if it's clear or not, because we already kind of ruined it with the non-clear epoxy, right? But we'll get all cleaned up, all the little gaps filled, so it's really smooth. Let that dry, and then we'll come through and do another round of sanding, okay, at the 220. Once we get this smooth enough at the 220 level, I mean, I might come back through probably with my 400. I'll come through with the 400 and get a little bit smoother again also. Spray it down, wipe it down, be all good. And then we'll go through, and then we'll work with our clear coat with the Clear Max, Spray Max 2K Clear Glamour one. This is the one that has the isocyanates, the stuff that'll like kill you in a heartbeat. Well, okay, but it's really bad for your lungs and everything else, especially not on your skin, but bad to breathe in. So it's finally getting warmer out here. Utah, it's end of March, crazy long winter. By the time we get back from TPF, hoping it'll be dry enough and warm enough, we'll be able to go through and spray outside with respirator and all that. I don't have to worry about trying to tarp down my entire garage to keep my wife's car from getting clear coat sprayed on it, and all the rest I have in here, my pinball machines. I still got 2 in here. So yeah. Anyways, that'll be the next step. So I'm gonna go wash up, but there you go. This planer, this block sander worked amazing. Just don't smack it as hard as I was. You'll start to pop it loose. All right. Hit it with my hand next time. Okay. There you go, guys. We're going to call that a wrap for this video. So we talked about getting the epoxy done, get it set in, make sure you've got a clear epoxy. It's nice to have an epoxy that is UV resistant so it doesn't yellow over time. Okay, look for that also. We are going to put down a clear coat, and this clear coat, automotive clear coat, is super UV resistant and everything else, and so it's actually going to protect everything quite a bit also. But if you can get a clear, that Gorilla Clear, I believe, also is an anti-yellowing. Anyway, we don't want things to discolor over time, right? So there you go. But wasn't too bad, right? Get the epoxy in. It wasn't too hard to apply. Let them cure overnight. Sand it down. A lot of elbow grease and some sawdust in the air. Had to open a door. Always have proper ventilation, folks. But there you go. Okay, guys, thanks for watching. Appreciate so much you guys coming along for the ride. We're getting close. Not ready in time for TPF, but we will be there for Chicago Expo in October. Come hell or high water. All right, thanks everybody. We'll catch you in the next one. Take care. Bye-bye.